Okay, I was asked to do a video on what size crochet hooks to use and when to use them. And so, if you're using yarn, then you can just look on the back of your package and it'll have a size that's recommended for you to use. The hooks that I use most often are this Yarnology hook. It's a 15mm hook. They made the rubber handle go all the way up here, so whenever I'm crocheting, and usually this happens with the fabric, and that's usually what I use this large hook for, is the fabric. Well, the fabric will get caught on that rubber, and it'll prevent me from moving it. So I put the tape around it, so whenever the fabric actually goes there, it just slides right off. This is a Yarnology hook, and it's a 10mm, and I get the Yarnology at Hobby Lobby. It has a bamboo hook. It's really nice. I really like that one. These other three are Boye hooks. This is an 8mm. This is a 5.50mm, and this is a 4.50mm. And these are the hooks that I use most of all. So this is Bernat baby yarn. It's the baby blanket yarn, and the recommended hook size is an 8mm. So if you go in to crochet with the 8mm, and it's actually quite nice. It's a little tight. It is pretty tight. And that's how it looks with the recommended hook. Now if I go up a step to the 8mm, it still works pretty good, but it's a little looser. So you can see that's a little looser there. And if I go up even further into a 15mm hook and work with it, then it's going to give me even looser work. And if I go down, way down in size, it's going to be super, super tight. It's going to be so tight that you can't even really see the holes at all. Now, if I'm making an oval, and this is the fabric strips, and this is about an inch. I usually use the 15mm hook with anything that's over an inch, and anything that's an inch under, I use the 8mm. Just depends on if I want my work really tight. I know I did one where I needed a rug to go right in front of my door, but my door was so close to the floor that I really couldn't get a rag rug underneath there. Well, I cut the fabric strips a little smaller, and I used the 8mm hook, and it made it flat enough to where my door could go over it. So if I want my fabric strips to be really condensed and tight, then I would use the smaller hooks. If I wanted it to be more fluffy, I would use the 15mm hook. Now, if I was making an oval, and I had to go back in and put 2 single crochets on each side, and then even on the ends, I would end up putting about 6 stitches on one end. It's going to create holes. It's going to create gaps and holes. So if I was to start off with a smaller size hook, because I don't want that many gaps, then I can start off with the 8mm hook and go down and go back into it, or I can switch over now to the 15 millimeter hook. And it would be hard at first to get it through, but I could work it out. And I could see that I have to loosen it up a little bit on the end. The gaps aren't going to be as big and wide. So I could put several into here. And it'll be hard and tight at first, but my gap isn't going to be as big. So I can switch over to the 8 millimeter and do it from here. And see, that makes it even tighter. And I think this was one of my very first videos. I did this in an 8 millimeter because I wanted it to be really, really condensed and really tight to fit underneath that door. So as you can see, if I wanted something very thin and condensed and tight, I would use the 8 millimeter. If I wanted something maybe in between the tight and the loose, I could use a 10 millimeter, and it gives me a little bit bigger. And then if I wanted it to be a big fluffy one, I could use the 15 millimeter. And that's going to give me big fluffy stitches. And all of them are nice. It just depends on what you want. You know, if you're in the bedroom and you want to put your feet on something cushy, then I would use the bigger one. If it was in front of the door and people walk on it a lot and it gets dirty and things like that, and it's got to fit under the door, then I'd use a smaller one. Or you could go with something in between. And so if it's an area of my work where I want it to be tighter, then I'd go with the smaller hooks. And if it's in an area of my work where I need it to be a little not so tight, maybe a little looser, then I can go with the 15 millimeter hook. And I hope that explains why I use the hooks that I use. Thank you for watching.